The king's favor, castration and public hanging in the Middle Ages. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and leave a like on the video. Now let's start. November 24th, 1326. Hereford Market Square, England. An immense crowd has gathered. Nobles, clerics, merchants, peasants, all come to witness a spectacle of ferocious justice. In the center of the square, a wooden platform has been erected. The guards lead a man of about 40 years old onto it. His face is pale, marked by self-imposed fasting. His once sumptuous clothes are reduced to filthy rags. This man, who was the most powerful in the kingdom after the king, is about to die in such a terrible way that it will remain etched in the collective memory for centuries. His name is Hugh Despenser the Younger, favorite, and some say lover, of King Edward II of England. In a matter of hours, his mutilated body will become a bloody reminder. This is what happens to those who concentrate too much power in their hands and make too many enemies. To understand how Hugh came to this end, we must go back in time and delve into the games of power, ambition, sexuality, and betrayal that characterized England in the early 14th century. Hugh Despenser was born around 1286 to a noble family. His father, Hugh Despenser the Elder, was a faithful servant of King Edward I, while his mother, Isabella de Beauchamp, was the daughter of the Earl of Warwick. Raised to serve the crown, Hugh showed early ambition and enterprise. When Edward II ascended the throne in 1307, a new opportunity opened up. The young king was known for his predilection for certain male favorites, and Hugh was able to fill the power vacuum left by the death of the first of these, Piers Gaveston, assassinated in 1312 by the rebel barons. In 1316, Despenser became chamberlain to the king and consolidated his power through a strategic marriage to Eleanor de Clare, the king's niece, thus acquiring the very rich fiefdom of Glamorgan in Wales. From that moment on, his power grew dramatically. Using his influence, Hugh expropriated land, defrauded the law, and stole wealth, even from his own family. His appetite for power was insatiable. In 1321, he was briefly exiled, but returned in force the following year when Edward II regained control. From that time on, the Despensers, father and son, were not just advisors, they were the government itself. But their rise created hostility. Nobles, barons, and even Queen Isabella of France, the king's wife, detested them. Isabella was publicly humiliated, stripped of lands and even access to her children. Entrusted to Despenser's wife, his hatred found an outlet when, in 1325, on a diplomatic mission in France, he met Roger Mortimer, a rebel baron in exile. Together they planned the coup. In September of 1326, Isabella and Mortimer landed in England with a small army. The entire kingdom rose in revolt. Edward II and Hugh Despenser fled with part of the royal treasure, but were captured in Wales in November. Hugh's father was brutally executed in Bristol. Hugh the Younger, however, suffered an even more horrendous fate. On the 24th of November, 1326, he was dragged to trial before his bitter enemies, Isabella, Mortimer, and the barons who had suffered under his tyranny. The charges included treason, theft, bribery, abuse of power. The sentence was already written. In front of the Hereford crowd, Despenser was publicly humiliated. They put a crown of nettles on his head, a parody of royal power. Biblical verses against arrogance were carved into his skin. Then the torture began. His genitals were cut off and burned before his eyes, a symbolic punishment for his alleged sexual deviances. While he was still alive, his entrails were extracted and burned. Only then was he hanged, beheaded, and quartered. His limbs were displayed in several cities, his head impaled on the walls of London, an unmistakable message: no one is above the law. 4 years later, in 1330, his wife Eleanor was granted permission to bury what remained of him: his head, a femur, and a few other fragments. A miserable end for the man who had been the second most powerful in the kingdom. Edward II also fared no better. Forced to abdicate, he was imprisoned and, according to a persistent legend, killed in 1327 by a red-hot iron inserted into his rectum, a symbolic punishment that, although it left no marks, alluded sinisterly to his relations. Isabella and Mortimer's new regime did not last. In 1330, the young Edward III took power, executed Mortimer, and confined his mother. The wheel of power had turned again. Centuries later, the figure of Hugh Despenser continues to divide. Considered by some a cruel opportunist, by others a victim of medieval politics and homophobia, his story has been told in plays, novels, and TV series. Today, his execution stands as the pinnacle of medieval brutality. But it is also a powerful mirror. It shows how power, sexuality, and ambition could, and still can, become explosively intertwined. Hugh Despenser's end is a tragic and fascinating reminder of what happens when you defy society's unwritten rules and lose the balance between influence and enmity. In conclusion, the story of Hugh Despenser the Younger is one of the most emblematic tales of the brutality and political instability of medieval England. His meteoric rise and disastrous fall were not only the result of his own ambition and greed, but also of a historical context in which power was gained and lost through fragile alliances and ferocious revenge. His tortured body, exposed as a warning, speaks to us of a theatrical and cruel justice, used to re-establish an order as violent as it is arbitrary. Yet, beyond the horror, his story offers us food for thought on the persistence of the dynamics of favoritism, abuse of power, and repression of diversity in every era. Looking at the past with critical eyes does not only mean condemning barbarism, but recognizing its echoes in the present, to build a future in which power and justice can finally stop being instruments of fear. That's all for today, and what do you think of this incredible story? Today it might seem absurd what was once normal. Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you next time. Bye.